Hi, and welcome to 2 Minutes with Hull and Hull. I'm Ian Hull. Today's podcast, I want to cover some more issues relating to the important intersection between family law issues and estate issues. And one of those issues is, of course, what can a married spouse, expect on death with regard to their family law rights? And what we have in Ontario is a very simple formula. That is that when someone dies, when married spouses die, you are to go to the will, and if you are satisfied with the provisions of your deceased spouse's will, you are allowed, of course, to take under the will. But we have a special right of married spouses in Ontario to elect under the Family Law Act and to accept an equalization as opposed to what was provided for in the will. So an easy illustration is that if you're a married spouse and you're not happy with your spouse's gifts under the will, and maybe you think they're too modest, and it's a trust arrangement that you're not prepared to enter into, you have the right to say to the courts, I choose to elect to take under the Family Law Act. Now, the equalization process isn't very complicated, except to say it can get very nuanced in terms of the calculation process. But essentially, the equalization process is you take what you had when you entered into the marriage, and you take what you have when the marriage ended, and in this case, death, because that was the trigger, and not separation, but death in a wills and estates context, and essentially you get the half of the growth of that. That's sort of a rough and tumble way of describing it, but it makes sense in some situations, for spouses to elect and take that equalization payment as opposed to what they may perceive to be too modest under the will. And the other element of it, of course, is the surviving spouse has the right to, whether married or not married, the right to seek dependence relief. And that is support beyond that which you would be getting either on the election under the Family Law Act equalization provisions and under the will. And that dependent relief right is something I'm going to talk about in the next podcast, but something that can be very important in terms of calculating what you're going to need on death for the rest of your life as the surviving spouse, married or unmarried. So thanks so much for joining me with 2 Minutes with Hull and Hull.